Composer John Cage asked us to consider ambient sound as music. Ambient sound is the music the world makes. As we make the world in our image, we alter, enhance, transmogrify, change, add to the ambient music that the world creates on its own. The universe wailed at its birth according to the tonal transcription of the original wave of background radiation recorded first by Penzias and Wilson in the 1960s. Our very existence became as a big bang for which the first vibrations, the first ambient music, was sung. What are the aesthetics of ambient sound that Cage asked us to recognize and enjoy? His 4 minutes 33 seconds is a symphony of silence for which his first audience may have not been prepared to watch, as nobody in the orchestra played anything for 4.5 minutes. Did Cage mislead his audience? Or did he give the audience what they came for, a place where listening would assume supremacy over the other senses for a period of time? Rather than filling the theater with prescribed notes written and organized to please his aesthetically attuned audience, he let the audience participate directly by producing the sounds of a crowded theater waiting for the music to begin. His 4 minutes 33 seconds roars its silence after the conductor alerts the audience and the orchestra of the moment of musical ascension, but then nothing. The attuned audience knows when to be silent, to restrict fidgeting, to fight the cough with a syrupy drop, and to refrain from any commentary other than subdued whisper. The ritual of the silencing of the theater prepares the audience to listen, and this is just what Cage did. Let the audience listen for 4.5 minutes to the theater and the sounds that it, the audience, and the orchestra produced without intentional instrumentation. Call it contrived, call it cheating or ruse, corrupt, or a lie, he followed the rituals and customs of the theater that prepare the audience to listen, and then did nothing more. We can say that he assisted in the meditative regression necessary for the audience to prepare to concentrate their attention on sound, to the temporary suppression but not suspension of the other senses. Next to me is the matron who doused herself with perfume, popular between the world wars. A phone rings and heads turn to withering critique at the transgressor. In front of me is the bald head of the big and tall man who I cannot see over or around, but who, nonetheless, disturbs my enjoyment by blocking my view of the orchestra and its conductor. The flashlight of the usher and the squeak of wet shoes as latecomers arrive all mingle with the coughs, sniffles, stirrings of crepe and starched collars, and the more than a whisper commentary, but this is all part of the ecology of the theater, the fundament of sound that underlies even the most adored symphonic work and for which the audience rarely listens to, that is, until Cage demanded us to listen. The symphony waited for the aesthetic of silence to fill the room before any sheet notes were offered, but through a different instrumentality than 4 minutes 33 seconds offered, the instrumentality of prescribed notes. Ambient music is at times chaotic, withering, rhythmic, surprising, falling or ascending, loud, barely perceptible, or like the sounds the universe made at its birth, something that only technology can prepare for us to hear. Cage held his audience captive before he gave them silence. He gave time to listen, to concentrate on, to hear, to record and think about what it was they were hearing. Yet, he gave them no more than what they came for, the ritual of preparation, a time to listen and hear and understand, perhaps ponder or lull the mind into sleep after a heavy meal garnished with ample drink. Some leave the theater feeling cheated, others could not hear because they would not listen, but some depart with the understanding that symphony 4 minutes 33 seconds was a symphony for which they had become participants along with, if not also, composers of the ambient music that pervaded the room. They became conductor and player, composer, and listener, immersed into participation with the world of ambient sound. Were those who first experienced the 4 minutes 33 seconds event changed by the experience? Asking us to pause, to listen to the world and its music is not anything new. We entered humanity fresh from life in the trees where sound came up and around and down. We landed on the forest floor where the sounds came from around and up, but the vibrations were different, entering through the soles of our feet, the elephant charging, the rhino running, the snap of the twig of an ancient cave bear, the rustle of escaping deer, the cry of the blue jay. We began our existential journey listening to 4 minutes 33 seconds 24/7 365 without knowing what any of those numbers were, because they were not yet an idea even though they had always been. Our earliest ambient symphony we learned to recognize and understand, or we died, and many did not survive as humanity tried to find its way in the world and the world of sound as music. We composed our earliest tunes to imitate, to lure prey to our waiting spears. We taught children not just how to say the name of things, but to sing its song, and the song of the world with which each species that commanded human interest would help us better understand the world and the songs they produced and repeated over and again. When the light became night, we huddled to listen to the echoes of hyenas and lions in the distance and built up our cracklings, spitting, and roaring fires to keep from becoming a midnight snack. We invented gods who filled the skies with lightning and rumbled the ground with thunder when they were displeased. We learned the sounds of sickness, of the existential displeasure of cranky babies, and the beckoning of roaring streams after the monsoon that bring both plenty and danger. We heard the rumbling of great herds of wildebeest or bison and began to salivate. The sounds of the world alert us to the affordances and constraints of the moment. Sometimes the music is urgent, the horn of a speeding car, sometimes muted, the distant echo of an elk's bellow as it seeks a mate. Cage asked us to return to our ancient past, and though the ecology was that of a warm, comfortable theater and not a dusty savanna, he gave us a place to reconsider our relationship to the music of the world. Cage is not the only composer of silence, which we can now translate into the ambient music of the world. We are given the opportunity quite regularly to travel into a different ecology of sound when we approach, ride, and leave the escalator, more than likely in a mall, in a large building with mezzanines, or to ride from the underground to the surface or back down where the trains and subways endow us with their regulated symphony. Escalator music is not written down, and it is subtle, perhaps even minimalist, but there is a distinct ecology that envelopes the escalator and its riders. What about this ecology can we discover, and what might it mean to us who regularly ignore ambient world music as we play the different songs of the business of contemporary society in our overcrammed minds? By listening to the escalator and observing the ecology of the escalator, what might we discover about ourselves? That the symphony of the world is not just sound. That it is an ecological event that involves all of our senses. Our heels and bones vibrate from the rumbling thunder outside the mall and the bumps under escalator floor that belies its wear from continuous use echo and response. In our hands, the warm rubber handrails that lift over seams and uneven track assail our senses even as we choose not to acknowledge them or dismiss them as irrelevant to whatever mission we are on. The smell of people, motor-generated ozone, perfume, lubricating oil, and the now distant candle shop that seems to have accompanied us on our journey launch our ascent. Halfway up, the taste of the styrofoam-encased burrito with cheese in the hands of the person on the stair wafts down to us, asking us whether we are hungry as we are leaving the food court level behind. The vinegar tart of the leaking garnish of hot sauce that pools in the bottom of the styrofoam container may entice or repulse, it depends upon our experiences with capsaicin. The smell of new leather, plastic, and garments fresh from the rack carried in plastic bags that rustle as their bearers adjust them to deal with the moving ecology of the escalator and the balances required for embarking, riding, and disembarking catch our ears and sometimes our eyes. The overburdened mother with packages dragging in one hand and a busy child in the other brings back memories of a similar moment of escalator chic in our own now distant past. The creaking, the squealing, the humming, the thumping of the escalator that announces an arrival with its own gives the symphony its own signature that is undeniably mall escalator. A snippet of conversation going down with accompaniment of the anxious child going up. The a cappella humming of a catchy tune that one hopes one will not also catch. For some, the ascent is accompanied by a piano recital or the quartet of teens singing the latest hit or simply giggling at some new video on favored social media. While there is much about the escalator musical event that seems the same, each orchestration, each ride produces a different set of experiences. Think of it as a baseline for a jazz ensemble that returns soloists and harmony to the same place each time, but the improvisation never repeats even though the tune that underlies their effort remains the same throughout the performance. There is an everydayness about the ecology of the escalator that welcomes not only the rider but the changing tunes that they bring to the event of the ride. The escalator ride is an extension of the human experience filled with both sameness and change that overlaps at times, but at other times jars as the teen gang pushes its way up the escalator with impunity. Or, as we approach the device, we watch the child who has waited at the maw of the escalator with his hand on the moving handrail for mother who has been talking to an acquaintance. His hand is now black from the soft rubber and his mother serenades him, not with an aria, but with anger and disappointment and a shuttling off to the nearest restroom once the next level is reached. We see the escalator before we hear it. The angle from which we encounter and approach the escalator means that our individual experiences of the escalator are personal. The escalator beckons the walker by its structure and the motion of the stair-like walkway that only those approaching from the front can see. This beckoning demonstrates availability, as does the peacock who displays his tail feathers to a possible mate. However, like Cage's 4 minutes 33 seconds, the potential rider must reorient prior to the experience, the preparation to ride, to change venue as it were, from walking to riding. This is nothing new. The ritual of the theater is a coming to, a coming into, and a settling into before the symphony even begins. The person approaching the escalator must focus on the event of riding and change from the habit of walking to the less sturdy habit of standing and riding a stairway that is forever creating and destroying itself. We are given little time for the transition from walker to rider because of the line behind us or because of our determination to get to our destination with the utmost speed. We are held captive for the moments of the ride from floor to floor, whether up or down. The angle of the escalator is that of the stairs common in most buildings, steep enough to walk up or ride up, but not so steep as a vertical ladder, and not so flat as to be a people mover that runs continuously on a prescribed track like the escalator but one that gains or loses no altitude. The escalator beckons and shows the way of entry both by its construction and a short platform before which a rider can prepare to engage the machine without falling. As one approaches the escalator on a busy shopping day in the mall, one begins to see a crush of people forming as people walk towards it, then the sudden cessation of walking for standing on the stair steps that literally form under one's feet. Moving without walking is the theme the escalator conveys to those who discover its presence and ride the device without moving their feet. Certainly, there are those that treat the moving stairs as stairs to climb or run up, but most wait until the escalator has reached the disembarking level to once again resume walking. The pause is palpable, a moment to reflect, to anticipate, to even look around at the changing perspective of the landscape unfolding as the device ascends or descends. There are worries of those for whom the escalator is scary, and those who do not know the necessary conditions and effort it takes to adjust from walking to standing on a moving device. The fear of falling down the staircase, of not finding footing at the beginning of the ascent, the mother who lifts her child onto the stairs and back off when the device turns itself under and disappears into the floor once again. Appearing, disappearing, a perpetual motion machine that appears perpetual, but metal plates blocking the entrance to a malfunctioning and now stopped escalator tell us that perpetuity is subject to the vagaries for which all technology is subject: befoulment, wear, breakage, and loss of energy resources. This is what we see and what we feel, and a bit about what we cognize about our personal experience with the device. From the moment we want to browse another floor or simply explore other possibilities, finding and riding the escalator commands at least the periphery of attentions, interrupted by that bling in the disappearing store window below that interrupts our train of thought. Like the theater whose ritual and structure contrives science in preparation for the sound and fury of the symphony, the escalator contrives the mind to change one's gait to participate with its operation. Like the never-silent theater, the escalator makes its own music and juxtaposes this with the ambient sounds of the world. The device hums, perhaps rumbles, and squeaks and slides. The people who ascend and descend may be silent or may use the moments of travel to converse with one another, or simply look around, pause intentionality for the possibility of seeing the environment where both the escalator and its riders are now associated and participating. The music of the escalator offers insight into the energy necessary for it to carry a filled step load of people from one floor to the next without pausing. As one gets nearer to the moving steps, the voice of the escalator warns of its presence and its power. Does the escalator beckon the mall walker to ride its stair steps? It does by being open and reassuring with a rhythmic clicking, squeaking, and rumbling in a tempo that resembles that of someone at rest or performing a repetitive task at a sustainable pace. The music of a properly functioning escalator soothes, but the intermittent and perhaps even the violent and deconstructive squeal of a jamming handrail causes anxiety because it is outside the norm, the rhythm of the device that soothes when properly functioning. The escalator is not unique, but it modifies the ecology, ostensibly to help people move from one level to the next. The escalator is the sight and sound of constant motion. It flows like the waterfall, but in hushed tones of the more leisurely brook that flows behind. The motion does not jar like the squealing cars on the elevated subway line outside my window, or the traffic that rumbles and hums over the head of the unhomed man who lives under the overpass of the highway. We both endure the rush hours and the long periods of silence after midnight. For most people like me, the escalator is an occasional experience. It is an interruptive experience, because I must become one with it to engage its affordances, the ride to the next level whether up or down. It may be the escalator from the subway to the street in the morning and then back at night, or when I am in the mall, to travel from level 1 to 2 and perhaps higher and then down again. The escalator beckons, but not like the carnival barker who pierces our attention, but still it calls me to enter into its flow. If I am down floor it soars, demanding an ascent. If I am up floor, it hides itself like a looming rapids in the stream. From above it is a looming maw that presages a fall from height, the indecent descent into Dante's Inferno. From below, it causes the eye to ascend the steps, the journey to carnal heights of ecstasy. However, it is to the mundaneness of everydayness that is the destination. Familiarity of the journey dulls the senses as it is Sharon who forever rows the departed to their final destination at the nether bank of the river Styx. Not only does the escalator change the local ecology through its presence, but it also funnels people into a line that moves in one direction at a constant unchanging pace. The escalator lures and lunges, slows, and funnels, unnerves the wary, and succors the infirm. The escalator demands change and offers conformity that is not easily overcome. It rumbles from something unseen and scrapes and clicks and squeaks from something seen. It unfolds stair steps, while also giving those who want to ride the escalator a short platform to step on. Then, one travels up or down to where the steps once again disappear. There are railings that move with the rider and stair teeth that glide alongside each other to form a continuous chain that makes itself into stairs and just as easily, unmakes those stairs at both the top and bottom. The escalator stairway is both an appearing and disappearing object in an endless do and undo loop. Filling it with people, bags, strollers, and hooligans does nothing to alter its continuity that is both a making and an unmaking at the same time. The music of the escalator is all these things, and more, because without people, for what purposes do escalators serve? The music of the escalator would be just rumble, scrapes, clicks, and squeaks that are repeated as the cycle continues if there were no people. It is the people who accentuate the rhythm with their diverse antics, creating a new symphony with each ascent or descent of human actors. We are players of the music of the world and we are participants in the music the escalator makes, enhancing what is already fundamental to its operation without interfering with its underlying scheme, its orchestration, its series of regular notes, and its place within the ecology. Its place is changeful and determined, but rhythmic and ritualistic because it requires certain ritualistic practices to gain, not its attention, but to unfold into its operation as seamlessly as possible. This unfolding once accomplished frees the rider to think like Cage asked us to listen and become aware of the musical world that unfolds around us each moment of our existence, from our birth cry to our death rattle. So too will the symphony resound for the universe from its big bang to its conclusion whenever and however that might be. Suppose the universe concludes with a 4 minutes and 33 seconds symphony of possibilities? What then? What then?